The stars seemed unusually dim from the bridge of the UES Defiant. Captain Elena Torres watched as the massive Kraxan fleet materialized from hyperspace, their biomechanical ships resembling a swarm of iridescent insects against the void. Intelligence had warned of an impending invasion, but the sheer scale of the armada had exceeded their worst predictions. 47 capital ships, each capable of reducing a small moon to debris, approached New Haven Colony, humanity's farthest outpost and home to millions of civilians. Status report, Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements precise and controlled. Evacuation procedures are at 68% completion. Captain, Lieutenant Sarah Chen reported from her station. Estimated 3 hours until full civilian withdrawal. Elena's jaw tightened. They didn't have 3 hours. The Kraxan fleet would be in weapons range in less than 30 minutes. The Defiant was all that stood between them and the colony, one ship against an armada. Open a channel to the lead vessel, Elena ordered, straightening her uniform. The massive viewscreen flickered to life, revealing the alien visage of Supreme Commander Vexthor. The Kraxan's crystalline exoskeleton refracted light in hypnotic patterns, their multiple compound eyes regarding her with what she interpreted as amusement. Human vessel. Vexthor's translated voice reverberated through the bridge. Your presence here is unexpected. One ship to defend your colony. Perhaps you've come to offer surrender. Elena allowed herself a small smile. This is Captain Elena Torres of the UES Defiant. You've entered United Earth Federation space without authorization. I'm ordering you to withdraw immediately. The Kraxan commander's crystalline features shifted in what might have been their version of laughter. Your species' arrogance continues to astonish us, Captain. We've studied your technological capabilities extensively. That vessel, impressive as it might appear, cannot hope to stand against even one of our warships, let alone our entire fleet. You're making assumptions about our capabilities, Commander, Elena replied, her finger hovering over a specific control on her command chair. The Defiant isn't a standard UEF vessel. Ah yes, your infamous human ingenuity, Vexthor mocked. We've heard tales of your species' resourcefulness. Yet here you are, alone, in what appears to be nothing more than an upgraded heavy cruiser. What possible advantage could you have? Elena's smile widened slightly. You're about to find out. Lieutenant Chen, activate the quantum mesh. The bridge dimmed momentarily as power redirected to the ship's experimental systems. Deep within the Defiant's core, thousands of quantum processors spun up simultaneously, each connecting to microscopic tiers in space-time that the ship's engineers had spent years learning to create and control. Unknown energy signature detected, one of Vexthor's officers announced, their translated voice carrying a note of concern. It's unlike anything in our database. What trickery is this? Vexthor demanded, their crystalline form shifting colors rapidly. No trickery, Commander. Just the next step in human evolution. You see, while you were studying our conventional weapons and defenses, we were learning to manipulate the fabric of reality itself. The Defiant isn't just a ship, it's humanity's first quantum-enabled weapons platform. As if on cue, space itself seemed to ripple around the Defiant. Thousands of microscopic quantum portals winked into existence, each one a gateway to a parallel reality, where the laws of physics operated slightly differently. The ship's processors coordinated them all, weaving them into a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Your last chance to withdraw, Commander, Elena offered, knowing what the response would be. The Kraxan never retreated. It was fundamental to their species' psychology. Launch all fighters. Full weapons barrage. Vexthor ordered, their crystalline form now pulsing with angry red light. Show these humans the futility of their resistance. The space between the fleets filled with plasma torpedoes and fighter craft, all converging on the seemingly vulnerable Defiant. Elena watched the incoming fire with calm determination. Years of preparation, countless sacrifices, and humanity's greatest scientific achievement, all of it had led to this moment. Quantum mesh at full power, Lieutenant Chen reported. Ready on your command, Captain. Elena took a deep breath, knowing that what they were about to do would change the nature of warfare forever. But with millions of lives at stake, there was no other choice. Execute Pattern Alpha, she ordered. Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of. The Defiant's response would become the stuff of legend, a demonstration of power that would make the galaxy reassess everything they thought they knew about humanity. The real battle was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same. The first wave of Kraxan fighters disappeared into quantum rifts before they could fire a single shot. They emerged seconds later, their biomechanical components transformed into inert matter, victims of slightly different physical constants in parallel dimensions. The plasma torpedoes met a similar fate, their energy dispersed across 1,000 microscopic realities. Impossible. Vexthor's voice crackled through the comm channel. Their crystalline form had shifted to a deep purple of disbelief. Our sensors indicate your vessel is manipulating quantum fields on a scale that shouldn't be achievable. Elena watched as the quantum mesh continued its work, creating a protective barrier of intersecting dimensional portals around the Defiant. You made the same mistake everyone makes when they encountered humanity, Commander. You assumed our technological progress would follow a predictable path. The bridge crew worked with practiced precision, coordinating the quantum processors that maintained their defense. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her console, adjusting the mesh pattern to counter the Kraxan fleet's increasingly desperate attacks. Captain, Chen called out, the quantum core is performing beyond projected specifications. We're achieving a 47% higher portal density than in our test runs. Elena nodded, keeping her eyes on the tactical display. They say necessity is the mother of invention. Looks like combat conditions are pushing our systems to their limits. The Kraxan fleet began to adapt, their ships spreading out in an attempt to surround the Defiant. Their biological technology allowed them to evolve their tactics in real time, learning from each failed attack. Plasma torpedoes were replaced with graviton beams, designed to warp space itself. Graviton attack incoming, Chen reported. Multiple vectors. Initiate Pattern Delta, Elena commanded. Let's show them another trick. The quantum mesh shifted, its portals realigning. As the graviton beams struck, they were caught in a complex web of dimensional interfaces. The Defiant's processors calculated precisely how to redirect the energy, sending it through parallel dimensions and back into normal space, directly at the ships that had fired them. 3 Kraxan vessels erupted in silent explosions as their own weapons turned against them. The remaining ships quickly ceased their graviton assault, but the damage to their confidence was already done. Your weapons are impressive, human, Vexthor transmitted, their voice carrying an edge of frustrated respect. But you cannot maintain such defenses indefinitely. Our bioships are already adapting, evolving countermeasures. It is only a matter of time. Elena's expression remained neutral, but inwardly she smiled. The Kraxan commander was right about one thing. They couldn't maintain the defensive screen forever. But that had never been the plan. Dr. Patel, she called to the science station. What's the status of the quantum mapping? Complete, Captain. The scientist replied, excitement evident in his voice. Every ship in their fleet has been thoroughly scanned. We have dimensional coordinates for all their critical systems. This was the true purpose of the quantum mesh, not just defense, but detailed analysis. Every portal they created allowed them to study the Kraxan ships from countless dimensional perspectives, building a complete quantum-level map of their fleet. Commander Vexthor, Elena addressed the alien leader. I want you to understand something about humanity. We don't just adapt to overcome challenges. We fundamentally change the rules of engagement. She nodded to Lieutenant Chen. Initiate Pattern Omega. The quantum mesh transformed from a defensive screen into something far more aggressive. Instead of creating portals around the Defiant, It began targeting specific points throughout the Kraxan fleet. Microscopic gateways appeared inside their ships, each one precisely placed based on their quantum mapping. "What are you doing?" Vex Thor demanded as warning signals began blaring throughout their fleet. "Our internal systems are shifting. We're not just redirecting your attacks," Alina explained. "We're selectively altering the fundamental forces that hold your ships together. Each portal introduces slightly different physical constants. The effect is, well, you're about to see." The first signs of catastrophic failure appeared in the smaller Kraxan vessels. Their biomechanical components began to break down as atomic bonds weakened in some areas and strengthened in others. Ships that had evolved over generations to be perfectly adapted to normal space found themselves suddenly incompatible with their own structure. "This is barbaric." Vex Thor's transmission was filled with genuine fear now. "You're violating the basic laws of nature." "No," Alina corrected them. "We're proving that those laws are more flexible than anyone imagined, and we're showing you why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our willingness to question everything we think we know about what's possible." The battle was far from over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The Kraxan fleet, pride of their species and terror of countless star systems, was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating human ingenuity. As their ships began to fail around them, they faced a choice that would define their species' future relationship with humanity. The void of space lit up with crystalline fragments as more Kraxan ships succumbed to quantum degradation. But the alien fleet's response proved why they had dominated this sector of space for so long. Their ships began to split apart, each vessel dividing into smaller independent units, a survival mechanism that no human intelligence had predicted. "Tactical analysis," Alina commanded, watching the transformation with growing concern. "The Kraxan ships are sacrificing their larger mass to maintain stability," Dr. Puddle reported, his fingers flying over the science station's controls. "They're essentially amputating sections affected by our quantum interference. Clever adaptation." Lieutenant Chen's voice carried an edge of worry. "Captain, our targeting solutions are degrading. Too many small contacts to maintain precise quantum coordinates." The bridge crew watched as hundreds of smaller Kraxan vessels emerged from their larger counterparts, each one a fraction of the original size, but still deadly. The quantum portals that had been precisely placed to disrupt their systems now found themselves targeting empty space. "As I said, Captain Torres," Vex Thor's transmission carried renewed confidence. "We adapt. Your quantum weapon required precise targeting data. Now you face not 47 ships, but nearly 400. Your computational systems cannot maintain effective coverage." Alina had to admire their tactical thinking, but there was something in Vex Thor's tone, a hint of desperation beneath the bravado. The Kraxan commander wasn't wrong about the limitations of the quantum mesh, but they were missing something crucial about human strategy. "Dr. Patel," Alina called out, "what's the status of the quantum field saturation?" The scientist checked his readings, then allowed himself a small smile. "Exactly as predicted, Captain. The dimensional bleed has reached critical threshold." "You see, Commander," Alina addressed Vex Thor, "while you were focused on escaping our targeted quantum effects, you failed to notice the larger pattern we were creating. Those portals weren't just weapons, they were seeds." The space around the Kraxan fleet had become something else entirely. The hundreds of quantum portals, even those that had missed their original targets, had weakened the barriers between dimensions throughout the entire battle zone. Reality itself had become thin, malleable. "Lieutenant Chen, initiate the resonance cascade." The quantum mesh shifted again, but this time, instead of creating new portals, it began to vibrate the existing ones. The effect rippled through space like waves in a pond, each dimensional tear resonating with its neighbors. The Kraxan's smaller ships found themselves caught in a web of intersecting quantum frequencies. What is happening to local space?" Vex Thor demanded, their crystalline form flickering through colors of confusion and fear. We're not just changing the laws of physics in small areas anymore, Alina explained. We're creating a cascade effect that's altering the fundamental constants throughout this entire sector of space. Your ships can split apart all they want. They're still trapped in our quantum bubble. The effects were beautiful and terrifying to witness. The smaller Kraxan vessels began to phase in and out of normal space as reality fluctuated around them. Some disappeared entirely, slipping into parallel dimensions. Others merged with their neighbors, their biomechanical components fusing in ways that defied conventional physics. "You're mad," Vex Thor accused. "You'll destroy this entire region of space." "No, Commander. We've calculated the effects precisely. The quantum cascade will stabilize in exactly 17 minutes, just long enough to render your fleet combat ineffective, but not long enough to cause permanent damage to the fabric of space-time. We're not monsters." But Alina felt the weight of what they were doing. The quantum mesh was more than just a weapon. It was a demonstration that humanity had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. The responsibility that came with such power was staggering. "Captain," Chen interrupted, "we're detecting power spikes in the remaining Kraxan capital ships. They appear to be charging their cores beyond safety limits." Alina's eyes narrowed. The Kraxan were proud warriors, but this seemed extreme even for them. "Scan those power signatures. What exactly are they planning?" Dr. Patel's voice was grim as he reported his findings. "They're initiating some kind of quantum reaction of their own. It's crude compared to our technology, but, Captain, if they detonate those cores inside our quantum field, the resonance could tear a permanent hole in space-time," Alina finished. The Kraxan weren't just fighting back. They were threatening to turn this entire sector into a dimensional wound that would never heal. Millions of lives on New Haven Colony would be at risk, along with countless others in nearby systems. The battle had entered a new phase. It was no longer about victory or defeat, but about preventing a catastrophe that could reshape this corner of the galaxy forever. Alina had to make a decision, and quickly. The quantum cascade was still building, and the Kraxan cores were approaching critical levels. The next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but potentially the future of human-Kraxan relations and the very nature of space warfare. The question was, could humanity's greatest technological achievement be used to prevent the very kind of destruction it had made possible? Alina's mind raced through possibilities as she watched the Kraxan cores approach critical levels. The quantum cascade field they'd created was still building, turning the battlefield into an increasingly unstable dimensional maze. They had mere minutes before the situation became irreversible. "Dr. Patel, give me options," she commanded, her voice steady despite the growing crisis. The scientist's fingers flew across his console. "The quantum cascade can't be shut down quickly enough to prevent the detonation. But, Captain, we might be able to use it to our advantage. The mesh isn't just creating portals, it's giving us control over local space-time itself." "Explain." "If we reconfigure the mesh to create a temporal buffer zone," he paused, double-checking his calculations, "we could essentially create a bubble of slowed time around their fleet. Give ourselves enough room to work." Lieutenant Chen spoke up from her station. "The processors can handle it, Captain, but we have to drop our defensive screens. We'd be completely vulnerable." Alina studied the tactical display, noting how the remaining Kraxan ships had positioned themselves. Their formation wasn't aggressive, it was sacrificial. They were prepared to die to inflict maximum damage. She opened a channel to their commander. "Vex Thor, you need to understand what you're about to trigger. This won't just be a localized event. The quantum cascade will interact with your cores in ways we can't fully predict. You could create a tear in space-time that spreads across multiple star systems." The Kraxan commander's crystalline form pulsed with deep red and violet hues. "Better oblivion than submission, Captain Torres. Your species has developed a weapon that makes conventional warfare obsolete. If we cannot defeat it, we will ensure its first use is also its last." "This isn't about weapons or warfare anymore," Alina argued. "Look at your sensor readings. The quantum field isn't just affecting our ships, it's changing the fundamental properties of space itself. If we don't work together to contain this, we'll both be responsible for an astronomical disaster. There was a pause, and Alina saw the colors in Vexthor's crystalline form shift slightly. The Kraxan relied on quantum mechanics for their biological technology. They would understand the readings better than anyone. "Dr. Patel," she called out, "what if we reverse the quantum flow?" The scientist's eyes widened. "Reverse? Yes. Instead of pushing reality apart, we could use the mesh to pull it back together. But Captain, that would mean loading all the quantum instability into the Defiant itself." Alina finished. "Our ship would become the focal point for all the dimensional stress we've created." She turned to her crew. "Options. The hull wasn't designed for that kind of quantum pressure," Chen warned. "We'd have minutes at most before total structural failure." Alina made her decision. Open a channel to all Kraxan vessels. When the connection was established, she continued, "Commander Vexthor, I'm sending you our sensor data and our proposed solution. We can contain this, but only if we work together. Your ship's bioquantum technology could help stabilize the reaction if properly synchronized with our mesh." "And why would we assist you?" Vexthor demanded, though their tone had lost some of its certainty. "Because this is bigger than our conflict. Look at the data. Really look at it. We're on the verge of proving something remarkable. That two different species, with completely different approaches to quantum manipulation, can work together to control forces that neither of us fully understands." The silence that followed was tense. Alina watched as colors rippled through Vexthor's form, the Kraxan equivalent of deep thought. Finally, the alien commander spoke. "Your proposal is interesting. Our bioships can indeed generate quantum fields that might complement your technology. But the risk is better than assured mutual destruction," Alina finished. "We'll take the brunt of the quantum backlash with the Defiant. All we need is your help to contain and direct it." More silence. Then, "Very well, Captain Torres. Transmit your synchronization protocols. But know that if this is a deception, it isn't. Lieutenant Chen, begin transmission. Dr. Patel, prepare to reconfigure the mesh. All hands, brace for quantum compression." What followed was perhaps the most remarkable example of impromptu cooperation in the history of interstellar warfare. The Defiant's quantum mesh began to contract, drawing in the dimensional instabilities it had created. The Kraxan bioships arranged themselves in a precise pattern, their own quantum field generators pulsing in harmony with the human technology. The Defiant's hull groaned as it became the focal point for forces that threatened to tear reality apart. Warning signals blared across every station as systems approached their breaking points. But slowly, steadily, the quantum cascade began to stabilize. Hull integrity at 47% and falling. Chen reported through gritted teeth. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before critical failure." Alina watched the sensor readings, knowing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Human and Kraxan technology, working in perfect synchronization to prevent a disaster neither species had anticipated. It was either going to be a new chapter in interstellar relations or their last act as sentient beings. The space around New Haven Colony had become a symphony of quantum interactions. The Defiant sat at the center, its hull blazing with exotic energies as it absorbed the dimensional instabilities. Surrounding it, the Kraxan bioships pulsed in perfect rhythm, their crystalline structures reflecting cascading waves of probability. "Structural integrity at 31%, Lieutenant Chen announced, her voice steady despite the violent shuddering of the bridge. "Core temperature approaching critical levels." Dr. Patel's hands never stopped moving across his console. "The quantum compression is working. Field strength down to 67% of peak levels and falling." Alina watched as the tactical display showed the gradual collapse of the quantum cascade. The Defiant's revolutionary technology, combined with the Kraxan's biological quantum manipulation, was accomplishing what neither species could have managed alone. But the cost was mounting. Hull breach on Deck 7. Chen called out. Emergency force fields holding, but we're losing structural cohesion. Through the still-open channel, Vexthor's voice carried an unfamiliar tone. Concern. Captain Torres, our biosensors indicate your vessel cannot sustain this pressure much longer. Perhaps if we... A massive tremor cut through the ship, sending sparks flying from several consoles. Hull integrity at 19%. Chen shouted over the alarms. We've got minutes at most. Elena made a quick decision. Commander Vexthor, can your ships handle a 10% increase in quantum flow? You cannot be serious, the Kraxan leader responded. Our bioships are already at their limits. Any increase could trigger a cascading failure in our neural networks. Better than watching the Defiant tear itself apart, Elena countered. We're too close to stopping this. We need to finish it now. There was a pause, filled only by the groaning of the Defiant's stressed hull. Then, very well, Captain. It seems we must trust each other one final time. Initiating power increase. Now. The effect was immediate. The Kraxan ship's crystalline structures began to glow with intense energy as they took on more of the quantum burden. The pressure on the Defiant decreased slightly, just enough to buy them precious minutes. Field strength down to 43%, Dr. Paddle reported. The compression is accelerating. We might actually survive this. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Humanity's first quantum weapon, and we're using it to prevent destruction rather than cause it. There's probably a lesson in there somewhere. Indeed, Vexthor's voice carried what might have been amusement, though I suspect neither of our species will be eager to repeat this experiment. The next few minutes were tense as both human and Kraxan crews worked to contain the quantum cascade. The Defiant's hull continued to deteriorate, but slower now, giving them the time they needed. Finally, Dr. Patel called out the words they'd been waiting to hear. Quantum field collapse reaching final stage. 10 seconds to complete neutralization. The space around them flickered one last time as reality snapped back to its normal state. The exotic energies dissipated, leaving behind only the normal starfield and a collection of exhausted ships from two very different species. Damage report, Elena commanded, though she could already guess the extent. Hull integrity stabilized at 12%, Chen reported. We're essentially held together by emergency force fields and luck. Primary and secondary power systems are offline, running on auxiliaries. The quantum mesh is completely burnt out. A considerable price, Vexthor observed, but perhaps worth paying for what we have learned today. Elena turned her attention to the Kraxan commander. And what exactly have we learned, Commander? That there are forces in this universe too dangerous for any one species to control alone. That cooperation, even between adversaries, can achieve what conflict cannot. The crystalline being's colors shifted to softer hues, and that perhaps we have been hasty in our judgment of humanity's place in the galaxy. Does this mean you're withdrawing your fleet? For now, Vexthor confirmed. But I suspect this will not be our last interaction, Captain Torres. Your species has proven itself both more capable and more wise than we anticipated. The Kraxan Dominion will need to reassess certain assumptions. As the Kraxan fleet prepared to depart, Elena reflected on the day's events. They had come expecting to test a weapon and had instead discovered something far more valuable. The possibility of understanding between different species, forged in the crucible of near disaster. Captain, Chen spoke up. New Haven Colony is sending thank you messages. The evacuation ships are returning to port. Acknowledge them, Elena replied, and send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them. She paused, considering her words carefully. Tell them that the quantum mesh test was both a success and a failure. We proved the technology works, but we also proved it's too dangerous to use as a weapon. Recommend immediate classification of all test data and the establishment of a joint human Kraxan research initiative to study controlled quantum manipulation. A wise decision, Vexthor commented, having not yet closed the channel. Perhaps there is hope for both our species after all. As the Kraxan ships disappeared into hyperspace and the rescue vessels approached the battered Defiant, Elena wondered what the historians would make of this day. Would they focus on the weapon that could have changed the face of warfare forever? Or would they remember it as the day two species learned that the greatest victories sometimes come not from destroying your enemies, but from finding ways to work together? The answer, she suspected, would depend on what both humans and Kraxan chose to do with the lessons they had learned. As she watched the stars through the Defiant's cracked view screen, Elena Torres hoped they would choose wisely.